Good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily, a bright new week. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Add to that, it's a beautiful one. I'm Kayode Okikiolu here in Nigeria's capital, economic capital, we call it. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
You're going to run into trouble one of these days, Kayode. Good morning and welcome to Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. I'm Maupe Ogunyuse from Abuja.
Well, this conversation this morning doesn't start in Lagos, nor does it start in Abuja. It starts somewhere in Ogun State.
Middle? Okay.
Well, it's about that viral information we all saw on social media last week concerning the railway that's lost fuel in transit, and the people were traumatized by the fact that they were in the middle of nowhere and that they had to deal with this after about an hour of waiting. There are still so many questions being asked by so many people. Of course, the authorities have attempted to say something, but who is going to say anything about the trauma that the people had to encounter?
Absolutely. I saw the difficulty you had in describing what happened. I mean, it's easy to say my vehicle broke down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we see these things. But when it comes to, you know, the planes, the railway
Please
service.
don't talk about the planes.
No, I'm just saying, those are things that you rarely hear and you don't want to hear. I mean, we don't even want to go to the planes. Let's just stick with this one. It's difficult to, you know, wrap your head around because this is something you never thought would happen. I've had to take the train, especially between Abuja and Kaduna, and I've had pleasant experiences. I think the most unpleasant experience I had was maybe a passenger eating too much, you know, and you can't say, please. I mean, I'm not a fan of that food. But that's the most I've had. I've had pleasant experiences on the rail service. But now two things stick out for me. And you spoke with the NRC, the head of the NRC, over the weekend on Sunrise. And, you know, I wasn't quite sure what was responsible for that. Is it a faulty gauge? Is it the fact that there wasn't enough diesel? Is it the fact that someone sabotaged that? I mean, he spoke about some of the things that had happened in the past. So we're not quite clear. Faulty gauge, not enough diesel, or someone actually taking the diesel that was meant for that particular train. And whatever the case is, it just beats my mind because that is a major route, I should say. But this is what happens when, the analogy that came to me is when a child fails to go to school when he ought to. Imagine you're meant to go to primary school and you push it to when you're in your 20s. This is what happens. You'll now start going to school with children, as it were. So whatever comes out of it, whatever ridicule comes out of it, you have to take it. I mean, this is not where we should be as a nation, I must be honest with you. Yes, I mean, we're here right now, we're making progress, but this is something we should have passed 20, 30 years ago. But we failed to do this, and I'm not even, you know, placing the blame at the table of the government alone. I'm saying as a people. So we have to take these things. These are the things that come, but it's gratifying to know that a committee has been set up. I am a bit wary of committees because, I mean, just in recent times, we've had committees set up for the bad fuel situation and a lot of other things, and nothing has come out of it. But something needs to come out of this one because I need to go on that train feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling that I will get to my destination without any, what's that thing again? Blood pressure?
And on schedule.
On schedule.
I think that's the most critical thing here. Yes, we had that conversation. We'll speak to that, you know, in a bit. But I'm still a little concerned about the trauma that people had to go through. Thankfully, Malkwe, all the times you've had to use this train, you've never had any such trauma.
Shan't we thank God for small mercies? Indeed. I mean, because all of the drama that has surrounded the Abuja-Kaduna train, I have missed almost all of them. And now, just when we're thinking, oh, perhaps we'll go and visit the town of Ibadan and see what the Lagos-Ibadan rail line is like, then this happens. Well, I sincerely hope it doesn't dampen the enthusiasm of people to want to use the rail. But this certainly is a dampener, an absolute embarrassment. I'm glad that the NRC didn't shy away from a conversation with you, Ayo, on Saturday. And it would have been interesting to hear what their responses would have been. But certainly, I hope that they accepted that this is a total embarrassment and that people who failed in their responsibility, because I imagine that there would have been people assigned this responsibility of ensuring that a train on a journey has sufficient fuel in it for its journey. Shan't we also be grateful that this train just happened to have an extra drum of diesel? You just imagine that there was no diesel. What would have happened? What would have happened? Well, I don't know what would have happened. But thankfully, it had one that could be rolled and, you know, put inside the train. Still, it is a disgrace. It is a disgrace. And I sincerely hope that beyond this embarrassment, perhaps we'll be also let into what has happened internally to ensure that this sort of situation never arises again. And I hope that this is not just something that will happen along the Lagos-Ibadan stretch. I hope it's also a message that will be sent to all their stations, wherever they are. The Warri-Itakpe route, the Abuja-Kaduna route, that this sort of thing would not be acceptable. Whatever it was that happened, while they let us know eventually what transpired, I hope that there will also be an internal memo going round to all the other stations that this sort of thing would not be tolerated. Abuja-Kaduna has had its own fair share. There have been technical hitches, there have been security breaches, there have been, you know, tracks that have been endangered, but nothing of this nature where fuel, a train, ran out of. I mean, people have asked simple questions like, how do you set out on a journey and you don't look at your fuel gauge, for instance? How do you do that on a public transportation system? Well, gentlemen, let's not extend this conversation further. Let us just say it as it is, that we hope that the NRC will not let this happen again, and that the parent ministry, the Ministry of Transport, would also take, because when this sort of thing happens, what I imagine would happen is that the minister will take an interest in what has happened under one of the parastatals in his ministry. I understand it's supposed to be somewhat independent, but if we have paid so much money that we're all now still paying back, this is not the sort of service we expect. And I want to imagine that the minister will take an extra interest in ensuring that the, is it the DG or the head of the Railway Corporation does what he's supposed to do. And then I'm sure that that should trickle down in that order, so that we, the public, are reassured that this sort of thing will not happen again on our rail tracks. Gentlemen.
Well, thankfully, we had a discussion with the managing director of NRC over the weekend, and here are some of the things that he said.
It's a pity that it happened, and that shows that we have to improve on what we do. We have staff that to check the technical, the fueling level at Ibadan, and they claim they did that. On its way to Papalanto, the operator who also signed off that everything was okay raised an alarm that the fuel had gone down, which we later found out to be malfunctioning fuel gauge. But however, as far as he sent that alarm, the staff on duty had to get ready to send diesel in drums. The case was saying was correct, and that's what happened. There was a technical hitch that was corrected within an hour. The advent of social media, there's no place to hide, and that's what actually happened. We are looking into it so that such thing cannot happen again. And you know the situation of diesel. So we are not also ruling out that some people were trying to play some games with our diesel. So as a result, we have set up a committee to look into it properly and come out with a correct position. So I think I'll stop there as regards to the situation that happened this week.
Well, as it is, that's just a snippet. It's about an hour, a half-hour, interview with the managing director of the Nigeria Railway Corporation, and a whole number of things, were said that I think will be incisive to some of the issues that we have raised about this matter. What's important, as you both have said, and as everyone is expecting, this shouldn't happen again. Remember that scare that a member of the National Assembly mentioned, that God forbid that this would happen with an airplane. And this is one of the issues the NCA is also saying, we're not going to allow this to happen. So if we notice that fuel prices don't improve, we're going to have to suspend airlines from flying for now. But in the interim, that's what has been said. Let's wait for that report and then hopefully improve our processes. Let's switch to the papers right after now.
Well, that's right. We're taking you through the front pages of the dailies right now. And we're starting off with New Telegraph. Now, this lead on the front page of a New Telegraph, I've not quite seen it elsewhere, but it's shocking. It's really shocking. So let me just go into it. Poor salaries, welfare, outdated weapons. Police to embark on 2-week warning strike, March the 26th. Now, that's a date that rings a bell for something else. But that's what you have on the front page of a New Telegraph. Say FG hasn't increased salaries. Don't forget that last year, it was in December, that we had that announcement from the Minister of Police Affairs saying, well, it's been approved that the salaries of police will be increased from when? January 2022, January the 1st. Now, this is March the 14th, and as I say, no show. So what's even mind-boggling is police to embark on 2-week warning strike, March 26th. I mean, if police is going to go on strike, everybody should just stay back at home, really. No point going out, because, I mean, if this is indeed the case.
Well, as we often say, the devil is in the details. So let's just go. But the fact that it even says it on the front page, lead headline, and I don't think I've heard that. Have I heard that the police go on strike in Nigeria before?
No, I don't think they're allowed, as it were, under law to go on
strike.
Well,
whether or not they are allowed, have they ever? You know, unfortunately, I mean, I needed to say that because, you know, we've always, you know, accused certain, you know, levels of authority in our nation of impunity, doing stuff against the law. So if the police, law enforcers also decide to be lawbreakers, I guess we'll see. So, but the concerns, we've talked about the concerns of the need to improve the activities and welfare of the police. Absolutely. For how many, and unfortunately, the police cannot speak for itself, or so we are told. So
well, let's just hope that this is meant to just grab your attention, that it doesn't mean what it says. Page 3 has more details. Oh, dear. I think that's like the story to just take, to allow it sink in, really, so we don't move on from that one. But, I mean, there are other stories you see. Financial year 21, 10 banks earned 557.91 billion naira in fees, commission. E-Channel initiative boost earnings. And finally, APC crisis, presidency re-strategizes, soft pedals on Buni. There's a lot of confusion going on. I mean, with the messaging, you hear this, there's been like 4 different angles to this right now. You wonder which way, as they always say. And that's the New Telegraph for you. Markway.
Well, let's quickly look at the Abuja inquiry. I was asking if the police have ever gone on strike. They have, and it came with pretty serious consequences. I don't think I was a journalist then. Perhaps I was still studying to become one. I don't know. But I do remember that the police went on strike. I think they were fired, and then there was a long legal battle to get them reinstated. Because the police said it was against his rules. It caused a very big argument then. as to whether or not policemen could go on strike. But if they are already announcing a date when they're planning to go on strike, I think that as much as possible, their demands had better be listened to. And this is something that the federal government promised. It was celebrated with lots of fanfare. The president had ordered an increase in their salary. So if this is the end of March, or yes, they're planning to go on strike at the end of March, 3 months after, and it's not been implemented, then there have to be queries flying. And I think that, you know, their protests to be very much in order. Take a look at what this is on the front page of the Abuja Inquirer. Mayoral Palava. Abuja natives vow mother of all protests. Threaten to block entry and exit points. That's what you find on the front page, or page 3. And just in case you're wondering what it is about, so while women have been, you know, protesting at the National Assembly, the natives of Abuja are also protesting over a certain provision in the Constitution amendment. You might want to ask whether they want it or they don't want it, but you might want to flip to page 3 of the paper to know details of the story. Abuja natives vow mother of all protests, threaten to block entry and exit points. Look at this. Oshibajo, Buhari and I have not had any religious dispute in 7 years. That is also on the front page. Power blackout. FCT residents count losses. Yes, we understand generation has been at an all-time low, and the FCT had felt some of the heat. Thankfully, there's been some rain. So, I mean, rain fell on Friday night, I think. I think it also got to parts of Lagos. That's what helped with the heat, because the heat was oppressive on Friday. But they have a story for you. Power blackout, FCT residents count losses. Let's leave it there for the Abuja Inquirer.
Let's switch to the Daily Times newspaper. And by the way, Marco, thanks for that reminder. I wasn't sure if I've heard that before. It sounded like something that I'd heard before. Wasn't too. What am I saying? Wasn't too sure.
It's okay.
The Daily Times newspaper has this one on its front page. FG initiates plans to restore fuel supply nationwide. Presidency source that's ascribed to says Buhari committed to avoid future recurrence. Well, let's see it practically. That's the lead of the paper this morning. And right above the nameplate, I've not had issue with Buhari since 2015. That's ascribed to the vice president. Describes president as a model leader who respects other people's beliefs. Those are the two stories on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. Certainly, there's a lot more on the inside pages.
Well, let's turn our attention to Daily Trust, and picks it up from with that conversation around the vice president, but with a different twist. And again, I'm not sure I've seen this elsewhere. Oshibajo notifies Buhari of presidential ambition. Why VP shelved today's meeting with APC state chairman. Okay, it speaks about it in the past tense, but it's meant to be today's meeting. Except it happened yesterday, but more details on the inside pages. I mean, when is that meeting? President not averse to VP's ambition. I see Tinubu's ambition, RCCG's memo put Oshibajo in tight corner. There's a lot going on, both inside the APC and outside, build up to 2023 elections. But don't forget the issues we're faced with: economy, security, fuel crisis, the recent NRC, aviation. I can go on and on with the issues we're faced with.
That crisis should be CRISES.
Exactly. So, I mean, we still have all these challenges, so it's important to pay attention to them as well. And then the pictures on the front page. I saw this over the weekend and I didn't know how to feel. See, popular pastor arrested concealing illicit drug at Lagos airport. And then saw pictures of the pastor, not while he was arrested, but before then, and start piecing things together. But more details on the inside pages. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or to be sad or to be angry, that kind of stuff. Not sure how to approach it. Goodness. And just right under the nameplate, Ebonyi to preside over APC convention as bigwigs move to vacate court order. So again, different communication coming from the APC. Let's leave it there for the Daily Trust.
The Guardian has this one. After months of relief, soaring energy prices raise inflation fears. That's the lead story on the front page of The Guardian. As countries ban food, raw materials export. At over 700 naira per litre, diesel becoming scarce. Firms struggle to sustain operations. War between Ukraine and Russia will make hunger crisis tougher to fight, says Olawale Cole. Just in case you're wondering who that is, you might want to flip to page 2 of the paper. But just what you see is what you see. After months of relief, soaring energy prices raise inflation fears. Businesses hit with 96.4 trillion naira losses as power failure worsens. So not only do you have to deal with fuel and an increase in the price of fuel, and then a decrease in generation, which is causing a decrease in what is occurring to the distribution companies, the power distribution companies, and look at the consequence of that. Businesses hit with 96.4 trillion losses as power failure worsens. Anxiety as students, parents await ASU's decision on strike. That is also on the front page as well. Lest we forget, ASU's 1 month is over, and I think today is the day that they're going to decide whether or not the 1 month strike is just going to be a 1 month warning strike, or if this is going to continue indefinitely. It's very uncertain. But as at Friday when we spoke with the ASU president, he said nothing had been achieved in the 1 month that was given as notice. Page 40, it will give you all of the details. You have a number of other stories at the bottom, which I'll leave you to do yourself. The picture itself is also worth 1,000 words. Nigeria is winning terrorism battle, says Irabo. That is also on the front page of The Guardian. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Nigerian News Direct has this one on its front page this morning. Mining industry, 2,000 companies, OFG, 2.7 billion naira. That's according to NATI. Stories on page 3. And has a rider, industry generates 128.27 billion naira in 2020. Several other stories on the front page of the paper. Malami denies exonerating Abba Kyari, says he only requested further probe. I thought this was done and dusted. Well, that's the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
Well, the Nigerian Tribune is next on our lineup, and talks about the energy crisis. As diesel hits 720 naira, man cries to FG. That's the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, imagine. But a lot of men and women in Nigeria also cry into the FG. And you see how FG plans to reverse fuel scarcity. That's according to the presidency. So you might want to find out what's in the offing, as it were. I hate to just project into the coming days if things go the way they are going. But the FG says there are plans to reverse this, so let's look up to that one. And politics, APC, CPC, odds favor Ebonyi. There's a lot of conversation around that one. And it will be a very interesting week, I tell you, on that particular one. But let's talk about the ASU strike. Why FG must prevent another indefinite ASU strike. Stakeholders, don't forget ASU called it a rollover, strike. So, depending on what they decide, this might just be rolled over. And don't forget that committee that's meant to renegotiate has 3 months. So what if this does not end in the space of that 3 months?
What? I don't even want to imagine that. What's going to happen to the students now? They've been home for 1 month.
There's so much happening right now. You wonder. But
is the strike going to continue? I hope not. If the strike does not continue, do ASU members go back to work from today or from tomorrow? I don't know. And what's the fate of the students? A whole
so there's
lot.
Academic issues, energy issue, economic security. Oh, by the way, 2023 capacity to tackle insecurity must be considered along with zoning. That's from Saraki. It's at the right corner, top corner of the Nigerian Tribune.
Insecurity, zoning. What are you zoning here? You zoning insecurity?
So capacity of, I imagine, so this is, let me just, more details. Page 28. I almost fell into that trap. Nah, no way. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
The Vanguard has this: 1 trillion naira inflow set to escalate excess cash in banks. That is on the front page. Interest rates decline will persist. That's from dealers. U.S. journalist shot dead in Ukraine. Another wounded. That story is on page 34. And for all those who are wondering, they say that this underlines just how dangerous the war in Ukraine is getting for journalists who are covering it. Page 34 is will make certainly will give you details of that tragic incident. APC crisis: Buhari saves Buni to conduct national convention, national chairmanship race thrown open. That story is on page 5. You also have a number of stories at the bottom. I didn't exonerate Abba Kyari. I only asked for further investigation. That's from AGF Malami. 2023, Oshibajo's running, but still consultants, according to a source. UTAS, ASU flays federal government's claim of failing integrity test. And you also have this, more politics for you. APC blasts Wike over utterances against Umahi, launches onslaught against 3 PDP governors. Pages 13 and 19 will give you details. And you also see the scarcity, why we give priority to foreign airlines. That's from aviation fuel marketers. Page 11 is also there. Your Mr. and Mrs. is also on the front page. So is Vanguard Sports. I know my starting 11, that's from Ebonyi. You find that story on the back page of the Vanguard. Let's leave it there for the paper.
The Leadership newspaper has this one on its front page, and it's politics. Amid court order threats, Boni gets PMB's nod to conduct APC convention. A few writers: unvacated court order threatens March 26 convention. Hearing of substantive suit fixed for March 30. Desperate cabal out to procure another injunction against Boni leadership. That's ascribed to a group. Find out which group this is. And that picture story is of some of the 301 Nigerians, including an infant evacuated by the federal government from Ukraine via Budapest, Hungary. So many other stories on the front page. Right under the nameplate, Genco's 1.6 trillion naira debts, grade mismanagement crippling our operations. Who is saying that? Find the details on the front page, continues on page 7, and a number of other stories on its front page this morning. And that's the papers this morning. We're back to take on the first issue for the day. Please stay with us.
Convention will hold on the 26th of March. I'm not only a youth leader or an interim spokesperson, I'm also a lawyer. And we have served a notice to INEC for the 26th of February. Earlier, we served that notice on the 5th of February. And that was the required 21 days. If you are going to make any adjustment to that date, all you need is a letter making an adjustment to a date. You don't need another 21 days. And that letter was since written about 2 weeks ago when we realized that we couldn't hold it on the 26th of March, on the 26th of February. The moment the CECPC agreed on the 26th of March, that letter was written to INEC, it was effected. INEC have accepted that letter, so that is long gone. It's not an issue. The issue of the date of convention is not in question, not in INEC, not certainly with us. So that's settled. sacrosanct that date of 26th of March, and we have complied with all the rules, and we have notified INEC as appropriately expected for us to do that. So that's no longer an issue.
And that's some of the matters we'll be discussing this morning. Don't forget that most of the pages, most of the front pages had something about around the president saves Ebonyi, and Ebonyi is to conduct the March 26 convention of the All Progressives Congress, the ruling party. There have been questions as to what was going to happen given the development of last week when it was seen that another caretaker chairman emerged. It's not clear if he was called that, but when he was asked about the whereabouts of the erstwhile caretaker chairman, he said he's not aware of what position he holds in the party, and said much later that he traveled. That's all he's aware of. Then much later, we heard from other governors who said that the president had expressly asked Governor Abubakar Bello of Niger State to conduct the convention. But it does look like there have been problems with that, legally speaking, and INEC has raised a flag on that. That's part of the clarification which a member of the caretaker committee, Ismail Ahmed, was trying to give there. We have this morning with us Mr. Festus Okoye, who is a lawyer himself, and also a national commissioner, voter education at INEC. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Well, you listened to one of the members of the APC caretaker committee, and he was saying that if they were just going to notify you, all they had to do was send a letter. They didn't have to wait another 21 days for that notification. Is it a position INEC agrees with?
Well, I think that there has been some misunderstanding relating to these issues. There are two distinct issues involved here. There's the issue of the meeting of the National Executive Committee of the party, and then there's the issue of the National Convention of the party. Okay. These are two distinct issues. Now, in relation to the issue of the National Convention of the political party, when the APC fixed their national convention for the 26th day of February 2022, they duly gave the Independent National Electoral Commission the requisite and mandatory 21 days notice. When they shifted the convention to the 26th day of March 2022, they also notified the commission of the fact that they were shifting their national convention. So there are no issues relating to that, and we never raised any issue relating to that. Now, the party wrote to the commission on the 8th day of March 2022, stating the fact that they were going to hold a National Executive Committee meeting. And that letter was not signed by the national chairman of the party and was not signed by the national secretary of the party.
Who was it signed by?
It was signed by several persons, around 8 or 9. In fact, I came along with the letter. And none of them indicated the fact that he or she was the national chairman or national secretary of the party. And we said, look, going by our own procedures, regulations and guidelines, letters to the party are jointly signed by the national chairman and the national secretary of the party. Because we normally demand that the moment political parties conduct their internal elections, that the specimen signature of the national chairman and the national secretary must be domiciled with the Independent National Electoral Commission. And so that when they write to the commission, we can cross-check to be sure that the letter that has come to the commission was duly signed and comes from proper custody. And so that was exactly what we did. And so we wrote back to the party saying, look, this letter we have was not signed by the national chairman and national secretary of your party. Please do the needful and comply. That is one. Secondly, since the letter was not signed by the national chairman and the national secretary, we also drew the attention to the provisions of Section 82 of the Electoral Act. And we had to draw the attention to that fact because since the letter was not signed by the national chairman and was not signed by the national secretary, we presumed that something was going on. And by the provisions of the same section 82, when you have to effect a change of whatever nature in your governance structure, you must notify the commission and you must give the commission a period of 21 days. You must give the commission 21 days notice. And that's what the law says. And the same section 82 says that if you do not give the commission this requisite notice in terms of change in your governance structure, that whatever you do is invalid. That's the provision of section 82, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act 2022. So I think that the legal advisors of some of the political parties need to sit down, take a second look at the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022 and advise their political parties accordingly. Because I have read so many commentaries, read so many opinions relating to what the Independent National Electoral Commission did. And people are talking about convention. Section 82 talks about convention, congress, or meetings convened for the purposes of either electing members of the executive committee or other governing structures of the party, or for purposes of party primaries. So it is not exclusive. So if you are organizing a meeting and you touch your governance structure, you must give us 21 days notice. If you do not, whatever you do is completely invalid. And the provisions of section 82 are couched in mandatory terms, that this is mandatory, you must do it. If you do not do it, whatever you do is invalid. And so on the part of the Independent National Electoral Commission, we did what was required of us under the law, because the Constitution gives us the power and gives us the authority to monitor the organization and operation of political parties. In other words, we regulate political parties.
So I'm just wondering, you've said that the commission has, political parties have to give the commission 21 days notice.
Yes.
In the event that a chairman, for instance, is ill or his secretary is ill, what should happen in that instance?
The party must notify the commission.
Okay.
Because the party must notify the commission, because the person, in our regulations, the letters to the commission are not signed only by the chairman and not signed by only the secretary. Both of them must jointly sign. So if there's any issue relating to the governance structure of a political party, the political party must notify the commission that they have this challenge and that this is the person who is going to act in the absence of their national chairman.
And you need 21 days for that?
No, not necessarily. But the commission must be aware.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I mean, if there was any room for any provision for, you know, for illness and stuff.
No, if a national chairman is ill and the political party notifies the commission that the national chairman is ill and the vice chairman, north or south, or the deputy chairman is going to be overseeing the affairs of the commission for some time, that is understandable. In which case, we will demand to have the specimen signature of the person who is acting. But if there's going to be a change in terms of the structure, if, for instance, you are going to remove your national chairman and then say, oh, the deputy is going to act, or anything of that sort, you must give us that 21 days notice. That's exactly the purport of Section 82. If you look at the wordings of Section 82, subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, it says, the election of members of the executive committee or other governing body of a political party, including the election to fill a vacant position in any of the aforesaid bodies, shall be conducted in a democratic manner and allowing for all members of the party or duly elected delegates to vote in support of a candidate of their choice. Now, Section 82, subsection 5 says, failure of a political party to notify the commission as stated in subsection 1 shall render the convention, congress, conference, or meeting invalid. And that's exactly the point we're making.
Is this a new provision?
It's not entirely a new provision, but it's been recouched in such a way to make some of these things mandatory.
The reason I, excuse me, the reason I ask is because some people have also questioned the legality or otherwise of the APC caretaker committee in the first instance. Does INEC have any problem? Are you bothered with the internal workings of a political party? Or however the chairman emerges is not really any of your business, just make sure you give us 21 days notice in the event of any change.
Well, the law is very, very clear. And it says that the running of political parties is within the internal realm of the political party. Now, but if a political party is going to change its a national executive committee, it must do it in a democratic manner, giving the delegates or members of the political party the right to vote in such things. And it is for the Independent National Electoral Commission to monitor such processes and also monitor such procedures to make sure that the provisions of the law are complied with. So, based on the constitution of each political party, they have means and methods of electing their party members, but such methods must conform to the provisions of the Constitution and also conform to the provisions of the law.
Let's flip this to Lagos. I understand my colleagues have questions for you.
Oh, we most certainly do have questions for Mr. Okoye-Markwa, but just before then, let's take you to international wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, where Emperor Simon, our colleague, is standing right by now, as more Nigerians from Ukraine have arrived via Romania. Good morning, Emperor. It's early morning, isn't it? Give us the updates. What do you have?
Yeah, thank you very much. We are at the international wing of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, where 31 evacuees from Ukraine have arrived Nigeria aboard a Turkish airline. We were told that the airline arrived at about 6:30 a.m. this morning. Contrary to our expectation that it was going to be at the regular point where the evacuees that have arrived so far, landed. These ones are coming, like I said, they're arriving at the international wing of the airport, which makes it a bit difficult for us that we're not able to get the arrival, the disembarkment from the flight and the regular activities that take place on their arrival, such as the COVID-19 testing, the documentation, and other procedures that the previous sets have had to follow. But we have been told by officials of the Foreign Affairs Ministry who were here with us earlier on that 31 evacuees are arriving this morning. So that's the much we have in terms of those who are arriving, and just like you said, they are coming from Romania. These, I believe, would be the second set of evacuees that will be coming from Romania. The first set, of course, was from Romania, over 400 of them. And the subsequent batches that have come came from Poland and from Hungary. This set, which is the seventh set or the seventh batch in the series of batches that have come from Ukraine.
Emperor, so go ahead now. So that's the update that we have now. The question one would be wondering is, do we have access to them?
I don't know if you...
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Emperor.
Yeah. Okay, you said, do we have what?
Do we have access to them? Are you able to? Are you able to locate them? Are you able to look at them? We have the number, but unlike previous ones, so you were able to show us, okay, these are the people that arrived and all of that, and the documentation process, etc.
Yeah, so that's the point. Like I said earlier on, this particular batch are not coming through the regular, arrival point where we used to cover them. That's the Arch Terminal. These ones are coming through the international airport, and because of the the international wing of the airport, and because of the protocol in place, we're not allowed to go inside the arrival hall where we would have been taking them, would have taken them as they arrived, and then see them disembark from the flight, their luggages being packed, and then going through the procedure of being tested for COVID-19 and being documented for other purposes. This time around, as I have said, we do not have that opportunity of seeing them one-on-one. But earlier on, officials from the Foreign Ministry, that's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, were with us, and we were actually supposed to have them for an interview, but the representative had to go back in and clear a few things with them. So we're hoping that when he comes out, he will give us more information about this latest evacuation. It's not a chartered flight. This is not a chartered flight where the federal government chartered a flight to bring the evacuees. These ones are coming, have come on board Turkish airline. And what we heard earlier on was that they came on self-sponsorship. But that's one thing perhaps that the official of the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs would be clearing with us as soon as they are here. And like I said, 31 of them have arrived from Romania, and we're yet to see them to ascertain their condition, their emotional state, as it were, with the previous batches that have arrived.
Well, we'll definitely wait, Emperor, for more details. Didn't sound like Turkish Airlines was one of those airlines listed by government for the evacuation. But thank you most kindly for the reporting, and we expect more from you as soon as you have them. Well, now that's that. Joyous news. 31 more Nigerians back from Ukraine, away from danger. Back to this conversation with Mr. Okoye. Well, one of the issues a number of people want to ask, you've tried to clear the fact that in the event of the question that Malkwe raised, that should the chairman or the secretary be indisposed, who will sign that letter that will inform INEC of the situation? And that, I believe that you have answered succinctly. But do you want to be clear on that? Is there a provision of the law that makes it clear that this is the person that can sign that letter to inform INEC that the chairman and the secretary are indisposed? You said about 9 people signed that letter, and as far as INEC is concerned, it's invalid.
Well, according to our regulations for political party operations, when a political party has conducted this election to its National Executive Committee or other governing body, that particular political party is supposed to write to the Independent National Electoral Commission, informing the commission of the election of members of its National Executive Committee and informing the commission of those who have been duly elected. Now, the letter will also indicate who has been elected as the chairman and who has been elected as the secretary of the party. And then we document them and then put their specimen signature in our docket. Now, if the national chairman is indisposed, for instance, we expect that the national secretary of the party will write to the commission saying, oh, the chairman is indisposed. And we also expect that if the secretary is indisposed, one of the national chairman will also write to the commission stating that particular fact. But the truth of the matter is that, and the obvious thing is that there must be a member of the party who will write to the commission saying, oh, our national chairman and national secretary are indisposed. But you know that in relation to the party in question, the issues are slightly very, very clear. especially, I think you understand why the commission had to raise the red flag. Because if we have a national chairman of a party and a national secretary of a party in place, and then suddenly we get a letter signed by over 10 members of the party without the national chairman and without the national secretary, it was incumbent on the commission to ask questions and seek for clarifications, and also ask the political party to do the needful in relation to compliance. So that's exactly what we have done. I do not see the difficulty in this. If a national chairman is proceeding on leave, for instance, he has to write to the commission, say, look, I'm proceeding on leave, and in my absence, the deputy national chairman will act in my state. That is the standard procedure. And all the political parties have been complying with these procedures.
No letter sent to INEC concerning that,
Mr. Party operations.
The understanding we have is that there was some communication from the chairman that INEC recognizes late Friday evening that, okay, this is the position, and maybe somebody is standing in.
Well, I have seen that a copy of that memo, and I saw that a copy of that memo from the media. That memo is supposed to be an internal memo of the party, and political parties do not forward to us their internal memos. There are procedures and there are channels through which political parties communicate to the commission, and I want to state unequivocally that that particular memo was not copied to the commission, and there was no communication from the political party to the Independent National Electoral Commission stating the fact that the national chairman was proceeding on leave or on vacation and that somebody else was going to act on his behalf. We didn't receive any of that. We didn't receive that communication.
So if you had received such communication, would it then be clear as to, okay, whether or not this NEC meeting will happen?
Well, we are not talking of whether the NEC meeting will happen or not. What is in issue here is that if somebody is going to, if the national chairman is proceeding on vacation, or medical vacation, for instance, and writes to the commission saying, look, I'm proceeding on vacation, and in my absence, the deputy national chairman will act and exercise all the powers that are exercisable by me. That will be understandable. And the implication is that whatever meeting that is called in relation to that will be valid. But the Section 82 of the Electoral Act 2022 still makes it very clear that you can have a meeting of your National Executive Committee and the commission will monitor it. But if there is going to be any form of change in your governance structure, you must give the commission 21 days notice.
Okay,
but
so let me get this clear.
If you are just going to discuss
Mr.
your national
Okoye.
convention and modalities of the party, we don't need 21 days.
Okay, so just to be clear, INEC is not saying that APC cannot hold that NEC. Am I right?
No, we are not saying that.
Okay, so APC can go ahead to hold that NEC that they're planning to hold.
Definitely, it is within their realm, it is within their power to go ahead with the meeting of their National Executive Committee, because it is within their domestic realm, it's within their party organization and operations to hold a meeting. But
okay,
if during that meeting you touch the governance structure of the party, or there is any form of change of leadership, if you are going to do that, you must give us 21 days notice, and you must comply with the intent and provisions of the law.
Now, the nature of this NEC meeting, according to APC's notice, is an emergency NEC meeting. And I imagine, same for caretaker, for example. I mean, it's not clearly spelled out anywhere that there should be. In fact, in the APC's constitution, there's no mention of caretaker. But that's what they have, and that's what they've been using. So, I mean, it was perhaps a necessity thing. They had to put it in place as a stopgap measure. So now that they're meant to have this emergency NEC meeting, by the nature of it, it's an emergency, something called to shelve perhaps further breakdown. Is that understandable within the laws that, okay, perhaps there needs to be some concession since this one is an emergency NEC meeting?
Well, I was not there when the National Assembly passed the Electoral Act, and then I was not there when the President assented to it. But if you look at Section 82, the entire provision of Section 82, all of them are couched in mandatory terms. And there is no place in Section 82 where the issue of an emergency meeting is mentioned. What Section 82 says is that if you are going to have your convention, if you're going to have a meeting, if you are going to have a Congress, where you are going to tamper with your governance structure, you must give the commission 21 days notice of that fact. If there's a vacancy in your governance structure and you are going to fill that particular vacancy, you must give the commission you must give the commission 21 days notice. Section 82, the provisions of Section 82 are couched in mandatory terms, and it says that if you don't give us that 21 days notice and you go ahead to fill that particular vacancy, whatever you do is invalid. And I think that not only that, political parties must also bear in mind and also take cognizance of the provisions of Section 77 of the same Electoral Act. Section 77 of the Electoral Act makes it mandatory that every registered political party in Nigeria must and shall have a register of all its members, and that before the political party can conduct any congress, can conduct any convention, or conduct party primaries, both the hard and soft copy of that party membership register must be made available to the Independent National Electoral Commission.
Okay, that is taken, but we're due for a break right now. I know INEC is in the middle of a lot of political issues in the country right now. So we'll go to break and come back to some of these other issues, big ones, I must say. So please stay with us. You know, it's a pre-election year, and there's always lots of intrigues within political parties, at the courts, and, you know, everywhere else in between. And we're continuing our conversation with Mr. Festus Okoye, who's the National Commissioner of INEC. Well, Mr. Okoye, thank you for staying with us. So let's switch gears now and talk about that other big one. And this one concerns the judgment regarding the governorship seat of Ebonyi State. As of the last time, INEC said, in fact, you had said on behalf of INEC, that the Commission had not received that judgment of Justice Inyangekwo of the Federal High Court, Abuja. Have you received the judgment now?
Well, as at Friday evening, when I left the office, the Commission had not received that particular judgment. But as at Saturday morning, a copy of that particular judgment was made available to me in my own personal capacity as a lawyer, and I've read that particular judgment. But in relation to the Commission, the judgment has not been served on the Commission. My presumption is that since the judgment is already in circulation, that there's a possibility that the judgment will be served on the Commission today.
Well, you'd expect that INEC, who is a party at least in that case, so has been talked about, will get it first before any other person. And it raises questions about how long it typically takes for INEC to receive such judgment, especially if it's, you know, I mean, important issues. But perhaps we'll talk about that. But seeing that you have at least looked through that judgment, some say it's quite clear. For some others, it is not clear. But from what you have seen, is it a straightforward judgment regarding what INEC needs to do now?
Well, I will not at this point in time speak for the Commission or on behalf of the Commission in relation to what the Commission will do. But our processes and our procedures in relation to judgments, orders, and decisions of courts of law are quite clear, and it's in the public domain. One, there is no judicial division of the High Court or the Federal High Court in the Independent National Electoral Commission. And we don't have any Court of Appeal in the Independent National Electoral Commission. Our remit and our mandate is to give effect to judgments, orders, and decisions of properly constituted courts of law. And that is what Section 287 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has mandated us to do. When we receive a certified true copy of a judgment, what we basically do is to understand what the court has asked us to do in terms of the orders that have been made, and also in terms of the consequential orders that have been made. And then we give effect to it. Now, if there has been an appeal relating to that particular judgment, we note that appeal. If there are motions for stay of execution, we note those motions. If there are specific orders for stay that have already been made, we also take that into consideration. If there are two competing court orders or two competing decisions, then we look at the latest in time and we follow it. So when the commission receives the formal certified true copy of this particular judgment, we will look at all these variables. But I know that as of Friday, the Commission received a bundle of documents relating to notices of appeal, judgments from the High Court in Abakaliki, and then some other motions and orders and so on. So at the end of the day, we will look at all these things comprehensively and then take a decision that accords with the national interest, and also take this decision that gives vent to the orders of the various courts of law.
Well, Mr. Okoye, you are sitting as INEC Commissioner right now, but I'll ask you two questions.
Yes.
One as INEC Commissioner and one as a lawyer. But let me ask you, first of all, as National Commissioner. Has INEC received that letter from the PDP, the options?
Yes, we have received, we got a letter from the PDP drawing, and that letter was signed by the national chairman and the national secretary of the party. They drew attention to the fact that there has been a judgment in favor of the political party. They also drew our attention to the fact that they have submitted in that particular letter the name of the person they want to be the governor and the deputy governor of Ebonyi State. And they also cited Section 287 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and asked the Independent National Electoral Commission to comply with the said judgment. So we received that letter, yes.
Well, I'm just wondering how INEC received that one when that is like a follow-up to a letter that you have not received. Now, speak to us, Mr. Festus Okoye, legal practitioner. What's your reading of that judgment?
Well, if you refer to me as a legal practitioner and you want to consult me, that means you have to pay the necessary legal fees, and then I will process your request and make a determination whether I need to give you free legal advice or whether you have to pay for the legal advice that I'm going to give. But in truth, I have read the judgment. I have seen all the declarations that have been made in relation to that particular judgment. I have also looked at the consequential orders that the court has made. And I think that the orders, the declarations and the consequential orders are clear. But it is left for the Independent National Electoral Commission as a body to take a decision relating to the issue of compliance. But as I've pointed out, we do not sit on appeal over any judgment, and we do not interpret any judgment. What we do is that the moment the intent of the judgments are quite clear, and we understand what the court has asked us to do, we go ahead and comply. If anybody is interested in going on appeal, that particular person will go on appeal, but we do not sit on as an appellate court because we do not have that interpretative powers. The judicial powers of the Federation under Section 6 of the Constitution are vested in the courts established by the Constitution. So our own remit is to give a vent to judgments of court and also to enforce judgments of properly constituted courts of law.
Well, there have been conversations that what happened from the Federal High Court here in Abuja was a declaratory judgment, and that it ought to have taken immediate effect. Did INEC read it that way?
It was the declaratory judgments, and there are also consequential orders that were made therein. Now, you will agree with me that it will be a tragedy when the Commission begins to enforce judgments of course based on hearsay or based on social media reports or even based on newspaper reports because the way we will look at a particular judgment may not be the way somebody who is not trained in the law will look at it. When we receive a copy of the certified true copy of a judgment, first of all, it goes to the national chairman of it goes to our chairman. Then from there, it goes to the legal department. And in our legal department, we have 3 senior advocates of Nigeria in our legal department, and we have a galaxy of legal practitioners there. Then they will advise the INEC committee in charge of legal matters and clearance. And in that committee, we have 2 lawyers who we are called to the bar in 1985. And we also have a senior advocate of Nigeria and a professor of law in that particular committee, and then 3 other national commissioners.
What I want to know is, how long does it usually take to transmit a judgment of court to INEC?
No, it has absolutely nothing to do with us. Now, if you look, as I'm going to talk to you as a lawyer, now what happens is that when a judge delivers a particular judgment, if it is written in longhand, it has to go to the secretary of the judge or to the registrar to type it. Thereafter, it goes back to the judge. The judge has to proofread it to be sure that what has been typed conforms to what has been what has been delivered. Thereafter, it is certified, and then anybody can apply and get a certified true copy of the judgment. And now, in relation to this particular matter, since we have a plaintiff and we have a defendant, it is their responsibility to obtain a copy of this judgment. The judgment I have read, and I need to be honest about it, the judgment I have read did not indicate who represented the Independent National Electoral Commission before the Federal High Court. So in that particular instance, I cannot say with certainty that we have gone to go and obtain a copy of the judgment. But I'm certain that since the judgment is already in the public domain, that those who are interested in the outcome of the judgment will definitely serve the Commission with a copy of the judgment at least today.
Okay, so until you receive the judgment today, you are not very clear on what the next action of INEC will be. The
moment we receive the judgment, we have received the notices of appeal and we have received other court orders from one of the interested parties. The moment we receive it, the chairman will make a determination on when we are going to hold a meeting of the commission to consider the judgment and the judgments and all the other surrounding issues relating to it. And then we take a position and then we communicate to the parties involved and also communicate to the Nigerian people because it's already in the public domain.
I see you're holding a copy of the Electoral Act 2022.
Yes.
The new Electoral Act. I'm sure that INEC is gearing up already for the elections in 2023. Do you envisage any, well, that is, of course, you still have the off-season elections to conduct before that time. But do you anticipate any hitches? Are you, or is all looking good to go for now?
Well, it's all looking for good to go, but there are also issues that we really need to be sure about. Now, in relation, one of the big issues that the new Electoral Act has made is to remove issues around pre-election matters from the High Courts and the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, and it has domiciled it with the Federal High Court. Now, we need to get back to the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court relating to having a practice direction that makes it possible for issues and cases to be determined where the cause of action arose, so that we do not have the same situation where a political party will conduct its party primaries in Anambra, and then issues around the party primaries will be determined by a Federal High Court in Borno State. We need to have a practice direction that enables some level of order and some level of certainty to be embedded in the operations of the various courts as we proceed towards this contentious period in our electoral process.
No, that's the only hitch you're saying for now.
I'm not. You know, the Electoral Act has just come into force, and there are so many issues that have been embedded in the new Electoral Act. We also need to begin what I call robust training of our staff in relation to some of the issues that have been embedded in the new Electoral Act, in relation to when results are transmitted and how they are transmitted, when we have conflict between the manually transmitted result and the electronically transmitted result, how collation is going to be done. These are issues that we are going to make a determination on, and these are issues we are going to deal with as we proceed. But one fundamental thing that bothers the Commission is the fact that since the new Electoral Act has changed the trajectory of collation, and the trajectory of transmission of election results to the polling units. In some of the off-season elections we have conducted, we have noticed that violence has gradually left the collation centers back to the polling units. And the commission is really, really concerned about that. So we are going to have a high-level consultation, especially with the security agencies, on how to protect our staff, especially at the level of the polling units, because the political parties know that results are now transmitted directly from the polling units to the first level of collation, and that those transmitted results will also be used for purposes of collation, and that if there's a discrepancy between the manually collated results and the electronically transmitted results, that the beavers will be called into question in terms of interrogating it to get the actual figure of those who were accredited. So we are looking at all these variables, and we are taking them on board, and we are preparing for the 2020 regional election.
Well, Mr. Festus Okoye, we have to thank you very much for coming this Monday morning. He's the National Commissioner, INEC, and also the Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee at the same commission. Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, we'll take a break at this point, and we're back to speak a little further to the issues within the APC. Please stay with us.
It's a continuation of yesterday's meeting, and just so that you don't ask me tomorrow, we're going to be meeting every day at the convention so that we put things together. And basically today we looked at the convention subcommittee, and we collected some reports from some of the committees, hoping that tomorrow we'll decide on next steps to take.
One of the major
Nothing much happened today.
One of the major things that will affect this convention, sir, is the zoning. And yesterday the committee submitted this report. Have you been able to discuss on this?
The report has been adopted, so it will be released to you any moment now. The zoning formula. Yeah, it will be released. Just wait, they will release it to you.
And how soon do we expect the next meeting? Because one of the reasons...
Hopefully next week. Yeah. In fact, next week.
Well, I did say we're coming back to talk about the issues within the APC. You heard the INEC National Commissioner there saying that they have nothing against the leadership. They're just saying, you know, the chairman whom they know and the secretary whose signature they have within their own offices should be the people writing to inform them or notify them about not just a convention, any meeting or any executive committee meeting. Anything at all that concerns the party, that letter should always carry the signature of the chairman and the secretary, which they already have in their custody. So how is this affecting the APC now that we understand that the erstwhile chairman, that's Governor Mai Mala Buni of Yobe State, will now be the one conducting the convention for March 26. I have with me here this morning a gentleman, Matthias Omikba, who is a member APC Young Stakeholders and member APC Rebirth Movement. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me, Maokwe.
Well, last week it looked like your group was, I don't know, will I say celebrating somewhat, and it looks like this week you're back to status quo. How is your own, will I say, group within the APC receiving the news that Governor Mai Mala Buni of Yobe State will be conducting the convention?
Okay, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. APC Young Stakeholders, APC Rebirth Movement was not actually celebrating. What we stand for has been to do the correct thing, to hold those in party position to live to their responsibility in doing what is right. We've been talking about convention, postponement and postponement. We have been for that we must adhere to it. We must give hope to the people that if we say something, we must live by it and do it. So that's what we are calling for, and that's what we are asking for. Anybody, if it's, we are not against Mai Mala Buni, but we are against anybody who will stall the process of the party constitutionality in doing what is right and by holding our national convention.
Well, you certainly had your fears about how he was going about conducting the National Convention. I think your colleague had been here a few times to talk about his, you know, the fears of your own group within the APC about how this convention had been postponed a few times, and it does look like even the March 26th date was looking a bit shaky. And it looked like you were justified with the movements that happened last week and the news that perhaps was Governor Bello, Abubakar Bello, who was going to be conducting the convention. That's what I meant by you were celebrating, because your colleague was here shortly after that happened, and it seemed like, oh, everyone else in the party had seen the light. And it did look like you had lost some sort of confidence in the governor of Yobe State to be able to successfully conduct a convention come March the 26th. But now that it looks like you know, legality is holding back a change in leadership within the caretaker committee. How is your faction? I mean, are you confident? I don't want to call you a faction, you're a group within the APC. Yeah. How confident are you that this convention is going to go according to plan? Okay, you must agree with me here that as soon as the caretaker chairman, May Malabuni, transmitted the letter of acting caretaker chairman to Governor Sani Bello. Did he really transmit a letter? Yes, he did. There were talks that that letter was not real. The secretary said there was no such thing. No. They can't deny that. There was a letter because he was embarking on a medical trip. It's not the first time Sani Bello is acting on behalf of Governor May Malabuni. It's not the first time. For that, there is no ambiguity in it, okay? What you would agree with me that as soon as that letter was transmitted and Sani Bello was was engaged to act, you could see life. Convention committees, subcommittees, even now, just on Friday or by the weekend, the subcommittee on the venue, going to the venue, you could see that the purpose, living by what Mr. President have asked for, that the date of 26 is sacrosanct, that a convention must be held. You could see that there's life into it, and that's what we are calling for. We don't want any shenanigans whereby somebody is bringing up one flimsy excuse not to hold the National Convention. We are overdue for the National Convention. We want the National Convention to hold so that we can move the party forward. We don't want anybody to derail this party from the lofty ideas that the founding fathers have built in putting this party together. And that's what we stand for. And that's what we will be like a watchdog. We will not allow it, because we put in our sweat, we put in our resources to keep this party afloat like this. We are the infanteries. We are the field people. We are the one who goes to field to deliver election for this party. So why wouldn't we partake in making sure that this party stays alive? We will do anything that it takes to keep this party alive. Anybody, we will hold them to their responsibility to make sure that this National Convention comes to reality. On that same Friday, the president was said to have written a letter to, I don't know who he was writing to now, is it to all stakeholders within the APC, warning everyone, yes, he asked for order in the APC. I don't know if you saw that. Yes, statement was signed by his senior special assistant, Mr. Garba Shehu, talking about how they should take lessons from the APC, from the once powerful main opposition People's Democratic Party. He says they're entitled to their own share of dissent and intra-party discord. These are common in all parties, but parties splintered by competing egos destined themselves to the worst possible fate. Why do you think it was important for this, for the president to write this letter to the APC? Malpe, you must understand the person of Mr. President, and you must know that the president is loved. He's right to admonish the party at this time, because a lot of shenanigans and blocks building taking place within the party. And it is important that Mr. President comes out to admonish us, to make all of us sit up, to know that power, it's not forever. If you do the right thing
and you are in the good books of the people, then the people would repose that confidence in you to elect you. But APC must realize that we cannot take Nigerians for granted, and at the same time, do what is needful. I thank Mr. President for coming out to admonish. He is well respected. I only pray that Mr. President will do more. Do more in the sense that Mr. President should come out clearly and boldly, because people love and respect him. They will honor him. If Mr. President comes out clearly more on party issues as the leader he is, you can imagine, Maokwe, that state governors would anoint, work for, appoint whoever they want in the states. Lots of privileges given to them. But when it comes to the national level, they also want to do everything. We don't want that. We want it to be more democratic. We want it to be more acceptable by the people. The only way that APC can continue to retain power is to do what the people want, and at any time, the majority of the party stakeholders.
Okay, well, it will be interesting to know how this is being received within the party. I mean, that's the president admonition, because that somewhat, you know, went into admonishing the press as well. Admonishing the press as well, and there were questions as to whether we weren't just reporting what we see within the party of the APC. But I'm wondering now, I mean, as you head into the convention come March 26, with all that is going on, with all that has happened, how confident are you that what will come out of that convention will be something that will be acceptable to all, given the background of where your party is currently coming from?
There's always going to be divergent views in political parties as big as APC. But the most important thing is when things are done to accord majority what they want, then every other views can be collapsed into one. I am confident that going forward in this convention, that the forthcoming convention of APC, that the party would pull together, will listen to our national leader, Mr. President, as long as he comes out clearly to tell us the direction and purpose where he wants to take this party.
Well, so right now you have no fear, because there are fears that the caretaker chairman wanted to, you know, make himself, will I say, lifelong, not lifelong, but, you know, wanted to retain the office as chairman of the party, and he wanted to stay there perpetually. I used to exercise such fears.
You know, when a child is born by the fire and he sees the fire, whether the fire is going to burn him or not, there is always going to be that fear. Yes, we have fears, but the fears have been adequately put into check by the mandate that the president has come out to usher, that 26 is sacrosanct. We believe him and we hold him to that. And the actions that the acting caretaker chairman, Governor Sani Bello, has put in place, it looks more real. And I believe when the caretaker chairman comes back from his medical trip, he would adhere and then keep to the same direction that the party has flowed into by this time.
Do you think that what has happened has caused bad blood? I mean, amongst members of the caretaker committee, the rift that could possibly have come out of a situation of uncertainty from last week, how do you think is going to affect the committee moving forward?
It could. Okay, but it will amaze you how politicians can rise up and quickly settle things.
Well, I don't know. We look forward to what will happen within the ranks of the APC come March 26th. But this emergency NEC meeting now that has been put in jeopardy, INEC refusing the letter, how did that come to you?
Well, if we are to go by our party constitution and also by the Electoral Act, I don't think the party has contravened anything in calling for its NEC meeting. And the same section, I listened earlier to the INEC, the National Commissioner. I listened to him, but he didn't quote a particular section.
He did, section 82.
Yeah, I'm coming. You don't take something by just one subsection, one line, and then that's it. There are other things. There is a subsection 82, subsection 2 there that speaks about that INEC may use the word may, witness, meeting, convention of political parties. Okay, but the clause there is, if you are going to change leadership, if you are going to tinker with the positions of people. Is the next meeting APC calling for, is it to tinker?
No.
You cannot, so, you cannot just sit here.
Yes.
You cannot just sit here and say, oh, they're going to tinker. But however, our party constitution does something. There could be a next meeting and there could be a vote of no confidence. But it doesn't mean they had planned it beforehand.
So while that can happen, what INEC is saying is that they will not be able to come to observe it because it is not duly, the letter which was inviting them was not duly signed by the chairman who they recognize and the secretary whom they also recognize as well, that they need those two signatures on a letter inviting them to anything that the party is doing.
Yeah, and I'm saying, I can't quote precisely the section of my party constitution, but once a 2/3 of the working committee members sign that they want a NEC, then a NEC would hold. That's my party constitution. Okay? And at the same time, I'm saying it is an emergency meeting. You see, laws are made and they are going to be tested. Okay? The Electoral Act, as amended, the current one, says 21 days, okay? But it doesn't talk about emergency meetings. But this is an emergency meeting, which the party has the right to call, but there's a section that covers it. Even in that Electoral Act, and say, INEC may, I might not be able to quote it verbatim, but it talks about that section, subsection 2, say, the commission may, with or without prior notice to political parties, attend, monitor such meetings and convention. It's there. I didn't craft this.
Well, yes, you didn't craft it, but you're also not... Anyways, I think that it's not... We might not need to stretch it right now. I think that if the APC feels strongly about it enough, perhaps they might go and challenge it if they feel strongly about it. But now that the erstwhile chairman, we understand Governor Mai Mala Buni will be conducting the convention, and who knows, perhaps this next meeting or calling for the next meeting, perhaps that might not be necessary anymore. Is that correct?
Let me put it this way, Maokpe. No individual is above the collective interest and above the party. The direction the party and the organ, the NEC, supersede any other organ apart from the National Convention. So, the decision that NEC takes will become binding on all parties because NEC is above Working Committee and the CECC.
Okay, we'll see how that eventually is translated, because, you know, there's an electoral act which guides the conduct of activities and affairs within political parties. But I'm sure that there will be certainly, definitely different perspective to the point of view which you have given. But we have to thank you so much for coming on this morning. Matthias Ominkba is a member of the All Progressives Congress Youth Stakeholders and also a member of the APC Rebirth Movement. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Once again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we'll take a break this morning and we'll be talking about something that certainly concerns you, the consumer. Find out in a moment. Please stay with us.
Just before we have this conversation, to quickly inform you that there has been a fire outbreak at Plymouth Road in Edo State. There it is right there. Of course, there's been a response by the fire service promptly to take care of that and ensure it doesn't spread worse than it already has, but we'll most certainly bring you more information as it unfolds. This happened just this morning, and as we have more information, we'll definitely bring to you to let you know. Plymouth Road, Benin City, there was a fire incident that took place this morning, and the authorities have gotten there. Now, this conversation we're about to have is with, of course, as you've seen in the welcoming slide, Babatunde Irukera, who is the Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC. Of course, an institution you formerly knew as Consumer Protection Council. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
I was going to begin by asking if you also got one of those text messages.
Multiple.
Oh, really?
Yes, multiple.
Give us an example. One that said someone died or someone owed money?
More, this person is fraudulent, is on the run, is an economic saboteur, and typically people I don't really know. Obviously people who might have my telephone number, and sometimes they would say that police are looking for him or court summons, there's been an order, and I know it's false.
Okay. Tell us about what exactly, because I'm sure so many people would receive these text messages sometimes and they will wonder, I know this fellow, what exactly is going on? Perhaps for some people to understand, there are what have been christened loan sharks in the country today. Tell us about them. What exactly are we dealing with here?
And so what it is that money lending is an industry of its own, and there's a legitimate way to do it. And some do it legitimately. Some financial institutions, including those who take deposits, also do money lending. However, what it seems that there's an expanded approach to it, where there's some who are unregulated in some sense. Unregulated in the sense that they're not licensed by the central bank or any other regulator. And there's been a proliferation to the point where with technology, it's just an app. You can download the app and borrow money from there.
Just a quick one. You say they are unregistered. Are there those of these loan sharks, as we call them, that are registered?
Oh, there are many financial institutions that provide the same service. Many microfinance banks. There are even money lenders who, because they have, they can take deposits. They're licensed with the central bank, but also do the same business.
Okay. Do they also conduct business the same way as these?
Typically, most of the licensed ones don't.
Okay.
I mean, you might find where a licensed operator would break the law in some shape or form, but certainly not as egregious as the things we've seen. And we've been at this for months, and the ones that we've proceeded against, we worked with the central bank, and they provided information about all the ones who are licensed to them. And we've received complaints, even against the ones that are licensed by the central bank. But those are easier to resolve because you can find who to engage and you can resolve the complaint.
So there was this crackdown last week?
Yes.
Right. What exactly happened?
And so what it was that late last year we had created a joint regulatory enforcement task force between the FCCPC, the ICPC, the FCC, the NCC, National Human Rights Commission, and the central bank. And so we had a few meetings and created an enforcement task force. And first thing we did was to tease this into different buckets. The ones that were licensed by the central bank, what complaints we had against them. And these are not regular complaints. The two issues that we proceeded with were with respect to interest rate compounding and a lack of clarity. And then what was considered a violation of privacy by public shame. And so after we put them in the different buckets, the teams continue to meet to develop a regulatory approach. There's a regulation drafting approach where teams are writing up what the requirements should be going forward. But at the same time, there were complaints continuing to rise with respect to the conduct of those, especially the public shaming conduct. So we created the enforcement task force, and for months, they were monitoring and trying to gather as much information about the businesses. We set up a portal for the public to provide information, thousands and thousands of mails to the portal, assisted with the information gathering. Then we started doing our reconnaissance work, and just locating them was just incredibly difficult. And some you would locate within a month, they would move. And so we continue to follow until we got sufficient credible intelligence about when and where to strike.
And that takes me to the next question. You worked with the police as well. I think you got some court go-ahead to clamp down, as it were, on some of this. What did you find out? I saw some names. I'd not even heard of those names before at the court. But what were the things you found out? I saw pictures of you addressing some of them with a team. And I wanted to be there personally just to honestly see what goes on behind the scenes with these loan sharks or what have you. What did you find out?
Quite interesting, and you're right. What we did was to proceed, because, I mean, when you're exercising an enforcement authority at that level, you need probable cause. And you have to convince a court about the evidence you have is sufficient to move, and the court granted us an order to search and seize. And what we found was quite surprising. You would arrive at a company. We already knew that many times multiple companies were operated by the same people. And so we confirmed that. What I personally found surprising was you'd enter into a whole floor of a building of up to 800, maybe 900 people working just like telemarketing or like a technical support center.
Did you say 800?
Yes, yes. I mean, the working conditions were poor, very hot, limited bathroom facilities, and these people, and there were records and pastings of what their workflow was. You must make 120 calls with, you know, easily on any one day you make hundreds of calls. So they're under pressure. You have a laptop, some of them headphones, and a telephone. That's the tool. And on the laptop, that's the interface. So you're going to see somebody's name, their account information, who they are. You can see information about who their parents or next of kin are. And then you have an icon for address book. If you click on that address book, the entire contacts on that person's telephone number is there. And so they have pre-written messages right there on the computer. And so the interface, the technological interface is between the computer and the phone system. So they've got all these messages, the intimidation messages, photographs of the borrower. And so right there at their computer, they're either making calls, sending these messages, and sometimes manufacturing the stories.
You know, this sounds like a sophisticated, you know, setup. I mean,
quite.
You get laptops, you get the applications, the softwares that can, you know, connect to a mobile phone, send those messages, and I'm talking bulk messages. But are you talking about the registered ones or the unregistered ones?
So what we did was that the raid was with respect to unregistered ones.
So these unregistered ones had such...
Absolutely. Pretty sophisticated.
And their offices were...
They had employees, they have HMO, they have health management, I mean, health insurance for their employees. Pretty elaborate arrangement.
I'll come to what should happen, I mean, in the aftermath of your crackdown, because I imagine there's something meant to come out of it. But let me go into uncharted waters, and this is me stepping into, I mean, landmines, as it were. So people approached these companies to secure loans, as it were, and there were terms and conditions. I imagine some of these loan sharks provided the funds. In fact, some of them do very fast. They say in less than 24 hours you get your loans. And these people that approached them signed up to the terms and conditions, collected the money, as it were. Now, I mean, there are a lot of unethical things, but in terms of that, I mean, I gave you money, you're meant to pay back, you have not paid back. Would you blame, or at least put some blame at the doorstep of those people who approached them to get the loans?
I think their prerogative to recover their loans is invalid. And I think that consumers owe an obligation to repay the loans. As a matter of fact, money lending is an important financial inclusivity product for the market. And the only way other consumers can benefit from it is that those who take loans pay. Yeah. However, there are repayment or collection methods that are prohibited. Also, for instance, if you've gotten a text in the past, you didn't sign up for a loan, and your telephone number belongs to you. You exercise the discretion to give it to someone. And so it ends up with somebody else who's going to contact you with that kind of message, not to mention the damage it does. Now, that you borrow money and you default on it, does that make you a fugitive? Does that make you a criminal? Does that make you a fraudster?
Or dead.
Or dead, or diseased. And so publishing that kind of information that's defamatory essentially, to everybody on your contact list, that's obviously excessive.
Okay, so what next now? Now that this crackdown has happened, because there are so many other things we would love to have you converse with you on, but what next? What follows this crackdown? Because
they're very amorphous. I think we've only just seen the beginning. As we speak, it's still going on. I suspect even some of the companies that were raided have found it difficult because they're quite nimble. And so there's quite a long road ahead to, we're going to keep doing this. One of the things we've also done is that as we were arriving in those places, we're also issuing orders to banks. And so some of the intelligence we've gathered are certain account numbers that are used for the business. So we're freezing those accounts. And we're also, for the applications that we've identified inappropriate businesses, we've also entered an order to the app stores to take those applications down. There's going to be quite some work to clean it up, but on the back of that, to put any of those on the app store in the future, you're going to have to comply with certain regulatory parameters. And so over a period of time, I'm sure we'll clean the space up.
These parameters will be issued by FCC?
Yes, we will issue the parameters.
Okay.
Which will be first, we've got to know the company. There's got to be a complaint resolution process. There's got to be a place where people can go when they're displeased. And there's got to be a code of conduct principles and guidelines that they must sign off on with respect to their collection methods.
How do people know legitimate money lending businesses just such as
There's no way for them to know. There's absolutely no way for them to know. There's absolutely no way.
But you said they're registered.
There's some that are registered, but all of them do business by putting up an app. So to the extent that you're going to the app store to download an app, you can't know which one is registered or not. I mean, the regulator, the central bank can know which one is registered or not, but the consumers cannot tell.
So approach at your risk, as it were. You know what? If there's anything consumers need right now, it's a lot of protection, right? I mean, from the loan sharks, but now energy, petrol. And this is something a lot of us have experienced, and I'd like you to speak to it. We'll talk about aviation fuel. I recall you were at the National Assembly recently where you had to speak to, the House of Reps. But a lot of people have to buy petrol for over 200 naira. And last time we asked, petrol price has not been increased. Some people buy it for 250. We put out a poll or question last week, and people told us ridiculous amounts they bought petrol for. What is the FCCPC doing in that sense?
And you're right. I mean, it's a season where consumers seem to have no respite. But with respect to PMS, what we had was an unusual intervening circumstance that created a shortage, which was off-spec supply. And taking that out of the market and then expanding the supply chain to replace created some level of constraint. And as usual, once there is a constraint in the market, you know that those who take advantage of that situation, including the retailers themselves, they actually had to create a team with the DSS, the regulator, and even the NNPC to go from filling station to filling station at night. Because what it was that some of the filling stations would just not sell fuel during the day because they didn't want to sell at pump price. And then at night, when they could make people pay more. And so the scarcity was not truly reflective of supply. And that's the problem. And it's the same thing in Jet 1 fuel also. And so we're doing all we can. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a society that self-regulates, because the totality of law enforcement and regulators cannot police the entire country. It's just not possible.
But have you had some level of success with some
Absolutely.
of these? How many have you clamped down on? What kind of punitive measure has been taken? Perhaps it will serve as a lesson to others.
Right. So one of the things that happens is that with the regulator, they immediately blacklist. And then once you're blacklisted and you're not getting supplies, your business is going to go down. I mean, that's the most important consequence, to make sure that you're unable to do business in the manner that you were doing business.
But on the flip side, I mean, because this is a chain, right? Yes. So the consumers, are you protecting the retailers as well? Because I tell you that we get these things from the depot at almost 190, 200 naira. So how much do you expect us to sell? I mean, that's trying to understand their own point of view. So perhaps they need some protection as well. So do you really go through the whole chain?
Many times things go problems arise at different points in the value chain. And so, for instance, law enforcement and security operatives are escorting tankers from depots straight to stations to eliminate a number of the different interventions along the supply chain. So yes, we're doing some work and protecting them in the sense that ensuring that all those tolls in the value chain do not occur, so they can take PMS directly from depot straight to their stations and sell at the right price.
Are you able to track the points of escalation of these prices? Because we understand that in Nasarawa, in Jos, in different parts of the country, as my colleague told you, we had to ask questions out yesterday, and people was getting fuel at ridiculously exorbitant prices. So have you been able to discover a point of escalation of these fuel prices?
Now, because there are few regulators and agencies in that supply chain space, we focus more on the market end when things get to consumers. But historically, fuel prices not being the right pump price has been a problem in Nigeria, especially as you go further up north or into the hinterland. But for years, that seemed to have been brought under control until this situation arose again. So I think whatever those mechanisms were that the regulators had put in place were potentially compromised because of a situation. And I'm pretty certain that we'll get back to some normalcy.
I'm sorry, we're totally out of time, but you said something, I need you to touch on it perhaps in 30 seconds, that the society needs to self-regulate. So what does that mean? What do I need to do? Because, I mean, there are filling stations around us that are selling for over 200. So what does that mean?
So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, that filling station is not a government entity. And so we as people really need to understand what is right and what is fair. And for the most part, just do it. And
what do I do? What can I do?
Well, it might not be you as a person, but whoever that gas station owner is an individual or a private business, certainly not a government entity. And so if we're going to wait for the government to come and whack every filling station, it's going to take forever.
Well, let's hope that forever doesn't take forever to come, because at the end of the day, just as you say, it's a business entity. They are there to make money, not to run into losses as well, and they are not a social service. So ultimately, some people recruited to do some jobs need to do it. Maybe we ask for more staff of FCPC. Don't answer that question yet. Babatunde Irukera is CEO, Federal Competition Consumer Protection Commission. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, a few messages have come in from you, your contribution to the program today. We'll begin with this one by Oshino Kingsley. These so-called illegal financial institutions, it begins, offer real service to Nigerians. Inasmuch as the rights of borrowers are to be protected, also bear in mind that those entities should also be provided security of their businesses.
Oh, I see Kingsley followed me to those mines this morning. Well, this next one is from Law Alpha C2 on diesel running out in a train. Yeah. I was going to put that to Mr. Irukera about protection, but you know what. It says Nigeria has continued to remain a theater of the absurd. One can't explain after spending so much on the real sector in order to have option B, only for a passenger train to frustrate travelers. So people have to lose their jobs, he says.
And Professor Inakena says on the Ebonyi defection judgment, it's a travesty if there's a concurrent precedent of a case which has already been ruled on by the Supreme Court. Then no lower court has the legal authority to vacate, suspend, or give a contrary ruling to such precedents. INEC knew such declaration is of no effect.
On the same issue, Olagunjo Oladele says judges reach an objective decision based on the evidence placed before them as they interpret the law. However, the proper role of the law is constitutional law instead of an interpretation of the law. Politics can be APC or PDP. The Constitution is not.
Well, Festus Akiboye's tweet now is on the APC internal affairs saying APC may suffer worst election results since the return of our democracy because of the chaos in the party, strikes, and the daily life of the majority of Nigerians that's becoming increasingly dysfunctional. He says, time for the ruling party to wake up from slumber.
Well, that's the program this morning. Just to also inform you again of that fire incident at Plymouth Road in Benin City. It has been brought under control, hopefully, because as you can see, there's a fire tank already there to deal with the issue. We'll bring you more reports as it unfolds. This happened much earlier hours of today.
Well, we hope you're already going about your business from the day or for the day and not slumbering. Certainly not. It's not the week to slumber. It's the week to be alert and alive. Thank you so much for watching this beautiful Monday morning. I'm Malkwe Ogun Yusuf.
So let's go ahead and make this our best week yet. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
It's an election year. Go get your permanent voter card.
Pre-election.
Okay, pre-election year. Go get your permanent voter card so you can recruit the people you need to do the jobs for you next year. I'm Aya Makinde. Have a wonderful rest of your day.